The following is meant for entertainment and educational purposes. It is not meant to establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please consult your mental health provider for your mental health needs. Hello, welcome to Chez Eric, my home, where we talk about psychiatry and religion with focus on how to apply it to your life. This isn't my home, it's still my office. I have to get used to it. I got so used to saying my home after that sentence that whatever. So we will be continuing with today's lecture series on William James's The Varieties of Religious Experience, and this is lectures 11, 12, and 13 on saintliness. And saintliness is a very, very important topic for James. And last time we talked about the overarching framework of what is saintliness, but James really wants to talk about the fruits of saintliness, and he goes into the individual fruits. He specifically he names a bunch, but I imagine there are bajillions of fruits to saintliness. And he specifically talks about a list. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. Okay. So the first major thing is charity and brotherly love. And the second one is joyousness and tenderness. And then equanimity, resignation, fortitude, and patience. Purity of life. Then he discusses about pain. And then obedience, poverty, and self-surrender. These are the things he talks about in fruits. I'll be honest with you, it was a bit jumbled in the sense of trying to organize it. He does organize it pretty well, but it just seems to be a list of things that he kind of just wants to talk about. I'm no expert on William James, but it seems like his book is so thick that if I went through the actual book and detailed everything, I became an expert more than people who haven't read the book. So, and also, thank you very much for your comments of those going through his book. I'm really happy I'm able to help and sort of clarify things. But I'm going through this as well. First time, I'm a psychiatrist, not a religious major person, but this is still very interesting to me, and I explain it the best way I can possible. Please go back to the original text to really know if I'm saying the right thing. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm more than happy to create addendums for the material. But let's get into it. James, in the first part of his long sort of discussion about the different fruits, highlights that there are fundamental, when the fundamental inner conditions of saintliness are satisfied, they have practical consequences, and he points out 4 practical consequences, and he pulls them out before he goes into details about each of the different fruits of saintliness. And the 4 things are asceticism, strength of soul, purity, and charity. All right? And so for asceticism is a fancy word to talk about people who are super, super, super disciplined with religious stuff, and where they avoid all indulgences in life. They're not even willing to eat a bagel or a donut because they want to avoid all indulgences in life. And this has been observed in many religions like Buddhism and Jainism, Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. And he points out that asceticism, as a consequence of saintliness, causes self-surrender, that it's so passionate, you surrender yourself to God, that it overrules all the typical inhibitions, like biological ones, as a measure of the degree to loyalty for a higher power. So in other words, the things that used to hold you back, the biological, let's say you really need to eat, right? You really want to eat. You can now fast for many, many, many days because you want to prove to yourself or prove to God that you love Him and you want to be close to Him, and you want to say you can overcome the biological thing. So that is asceticism, and that's one of the major practical consequences of saintliness. The second one is strength of soul. And here James is talking about, he says an enlargement about life that's so uplifting that personal motives and inhibitions become too insignificant for notice. So for example, I had a friend of mine who was very religious, and he delved deeper into it and deeper and deeper, and all of a sudden, he told me one day, he said, like, Eric, I only want to read Bible stuff now. I only want to read about Bible things. And I really don't care about like TV shows anymore. I don't really care about, what happened on the next TV series. I just want to read biblical things. And that's really cool. And so with this, it seems that there's this enlargement of life, that's what he calls it, but like an expansion of understanding life as it relates to God, such that everything else is kind of insignificant, and all you want to do is know about God, right? And that fears and anxieties about life kind of just melt away, and there's a blissful calmness in how the world works. And whether heaven or hell comes, that's what James says, it really makes no difference. So strength of soul, that's one of the major practical consequences of saintliness. The third one is purity. And here, we'll talk about purity more in detail later, but for now he describes it as a sensitivity to the spiritual conflict, and therefore cleansing yourself is important in order to keep yourself pure, right? And you want to cleanse yourself of what he says, of brutal and sensual elements, and that's very, very important. So this idea of purity comes into play where you want to keep things pure, and you're very, very sensitive to inner conflict of things that are impure. Typically things of this world that are fleshly. That's what the common language we would use. And finally, the fourth major practical consequence he lists out in this first sort of section is charity, right? And he talks more about charity later, but here he describes it as a tenderness towards other people. And ordinary motives are hated and are inhibited. And the saint even loves his enemies and even treat those that are loathsome, like beggars, as brothers. And this charity, this sense of loving towards others, is a practical consequence of saintliness. And these are the four major things he, again, kind of starts off with. But then later we'll be talking about more specific things, like the original 8 stuff that I talked about, that I listed out in the first part of this video. I hope you enjoyed that. Like and subscribe, and I'll chat with you next time. Bye. Hey, sign up for my weekly newsletter. I send out emails every week on psychiatry and religion. I realize that email is a great way to go deep into these topics. So if you want more content, check out chesericpurl.com and subscribe over there. Thanks.